Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Disability News Report, where we are changing the narrative to talk about popular topics already being discussed, but in make sure to include people with disabilities in those conversations. So I'm going to be talking today with Dr. Rebekah Hughey about the subconscious mind. And I really wanted to do it right now during this time frame because people can be stressed out anyways over the holidays. The Christmas season can bring all sorts of stress and anxiety for any number of reasons, whether it's financial reasons, just sort of what do I buy this person reasons, or maybe you're missing a loved one and it's a difficult time of year. This year, 2020, can make it even harder simply because we are still dealing with this COVID-19. So I wanted to talk to Dr. Rebekah Hughey, and she's going to talk to us about the subconscious mind. And specifically, as a doctor, she engages in hypnotherapy in her private practice. And hypnotherapy is all about going into your subconscious mind, and getting you into a different state of mind in order to then change your behavior and change your thought process going forward. So in this interview, you're going to learn what hypnosis is, what hypnotherapy, whichever one you want to call it, is, what it is not, and then how you can go into your subconscious mind and what the benefits are, because they benefit many people, all of us, whether you have anxiety all the time, whether it's Christmas time or not, or whether you don't. Going into your subconscious mind can benefit all of us in so many different ways. So she's going to talk to us about how it gets done and what the benefits are and how we can utilize it. All of that coming up next. So what exactly is hypnotherapy?
So hypnotherapy, in the most basic terms, would be therapy using hypnosis. So we like to say anything that you can do better with hypnosis. With hypnotherapy, so with hypnosis is there, I'll give three terms: hypnosis, trance, and suggestion. So trance is basically some people call it an altered state of mind or a focused state of attention. It's basically an altered state of mind. Um, and, people will talk about being in a zone, or that's the best way to think of it, I mean, in practical terms. So that's the trance state. And you can go into trance state using different things. Like you can do prayer. You can go into trance state using prayer, ritualistic drumming, again, meditation. People say the rosary to go into trance. So there's different ways to go into trance. And hypnosis is one way that I help people to go into trance. And so using hypnosis, and we'll probably get back to this a little bit later, but we can tell the mind to use, we can give suggestions that we come up with together. So hypnosis is a way to go into the trance state. And then so hypnotherapy is using hypnosis to perform different types of therapy.
Okay, so what exactly is happening? Because, you know, there have been so many things you see in the media, especially I can remember from like many shows in the 90s where people are going to their therapist and they are going into maybe this trance state that you're talking about, and there's this whole like, oh, you're getting very sleepy, close your eyes, and your eyes are closing, and then their eyes do close, and then for comedic effect they have them doing all this crazy stuff, and then snap the fingers, wake up out of it, they remember nothing of so what exactly happens in real life when someone is in a trance?
I like that. I never tell people they're getting very sleepy because you don't want people to go to sleep. Trance is different from sleep. Um, it's somewhat realistic. I mean, uh, again, it's an altered state. So, and sleep is an altered state as well, because you're in a different level of consciousness. So, what actually happens is that one, I don't put people down. I don't. make people go into trance. We all go into trance naturally every day, multiple times a day. If you've, ever been daydreaming, you've been in trance. If you've ever been anxious about anything, you've been in trance. If you've ever been planning something, you're in trance. Imagination. If you've been in the shower and all of a sudden this great idea comes to you, it's because you were in a trance state. So what I do is basically teach people how to realize what that trance state is, and then facilitate their going into trance state at will to solve a particular problem or to realize a particular result. And I mean, that can be done in many ways. And the way to facilitate trance just depends on who the person is and what their needs are, and then what their experiences are. So I can even, we go in and out of trance all the time, even during conversation. If you lock eyes with somebody and you're really into a good conversation and you lose track of time, you've both been in trance together. So I can even use conversational trance. I can have people, stare at something until their eyes get tired or their eyelids get heavy, and then they relax and then go into trance. So when you say what's happening, it all just depends on what the client or patient wants to happen. But the goal is that we're both cooperating together to get them to that state so that we can do change work together.
So, just using that same example that I used beforehand,
Yeah.
in those situations, they had the people not remembering what happened and what they did in that trance state. Is this the same situation where someone goes into a trance state in a clinical setting with you as the doctor, and they're closing their eyes and, I guess, tapping into their are they tapping into their subconscious mind? And then
Hmm.
if so, are they, when they come out of that state, are they able to remember what happened?
Oh, okay. So I should probably talk a little bit about conscious and unconscious first, to be able to answer that question well.
Okay.
So the conscious mind, there's the conscious and then subconscious and then the unconscious mind, I like to say. So the conscious mind is what we use day to day to make decisions, um, kind of like our executive brain. It's like if you look at a computer and um, it's that way, you have several windows open. So the conscious mind would be kind of like that window that's open right in front of you. Um, so that's what we're most used to. Then you have the subconscious, which is kind of just below the subconscious. Like if I asked you what you ate for dinner last Thursday, um, it's not there, but you could probably get to it. So you could maybe go into like a light altered state, kind of forget everything that's going on around you, um, really focus, go back. Okay, well, I did this on Thursday, or I usually go to this place on Thursday. Oh, yeah, that's right, we did this. And then you could probably figure out what you had for dinner last Thursday. So that's kind of like that's if you close the window in front of you and then, click a few windows back, and it's there, you can get to it, but it's not immediately available to you. So a lot of times that's where I operate, is back there. And then there's the unconscious mind, which is that basically your whole operating system, your hard drive. And a lot of times we'll lump the subconscious and the unconscious together because those are both states that we're not immediately operating from or conscious of on a day-to-day basis, but basically run in the background things, that are, run things in the background. So um, I help people to turn down or make less prominent their conscious thoughts, which often are racing and analytical, can be worried. So I help them to either turn that down or take their attention away from that and access the deeper levels of consciousness. So if somebody's in trance, they don't often remember specifically what I said. They might not often remember everything that happened. So, in that sense, you can say they forgot, but all memories are stored in the mind. So, they're there, they're just not immediately available to the conscious mind because they were in an altered state. Just like we dream all night almost, but we don't always remember our dreams. So, it's not like this, again, like people think of hypnosis is this mysterious thing. But again, we go into trance all the time. We dream all the time. We don't always remember what we dreamed about. But yes, if it's done, um, if somebody is in a deep enough trance, they're not going to have immediate recall of what was said or done.
So I read that this type of therapy can be good for someone who may have anxiety or PTSD. So just taking someone with PTSD, for example, if you're trying to get them to, well, I guess before I just start making assumptions, what could be a benefit to someone with PTSD? What are you trying to get them to do? What memories are you trying to maybe get them to bring to their conscious? And then what's sort of the goal to do you want have for them to do with those memories?
So I'll start out by saying with hypnosis, because you can learn hypnosis through, you can come to hypnosis through a number of different channels. Like you can be a psychiatrist, you can be a social worker, a psychologist, a physician, um, and depending on your level of training, ideally you would practice hypnosis in that space. That being said, since I don't have training in treating people with PTSD, I don't treat PTSD or trauma because that's a
Okay.
specialized field. But I can answer that question in general. What would happen is somebody would get a very good history about what happened, what was the event that took place that caused the PTSD, and then what they would do is that they would use the person's ability to, again, let go of the conscious mind and any triggers that are in the conscious mind, access that. Sometimes they might do what we call regression, where they go back in time and not necessarily relive the event, but change or reshape the event so that some things that people do help them to remember the event differently. Um, some people will have them, if there's a physical component to the PTSD, they might have them uh, do some physiological things that cause changes. So if they will get anxious or sweating, and then we can talk about, so this would be related to anxiety. If I have a panic attack or someone else has a panic attack, what we can do is we can teach them to um, notice how their body acts just before they're going to panic. So different triggers. Some people might get nauseous, or some people might have a tingling in their left hand, or whatever it is. And I can have them notice as soon as that starts to happen and counteract that. And then in that way control, and then we'll never get the panic attack. So PTSD is pretty complex, but in general, what we do, there's different tools that we can do to control both physiological symptoms, and then also the psychological symptoms of different diagnoses.
Okay, but just going back even to your anxiety example, you're trying
Yeah.
to use that state, or I guess that trans state, to get them to access and remember their feelings that may lead up to anxiety in certain situations, so that then going forward, when they're no longer in a session with you and they're out going about their day, they can recognize those symptoms as they're happening to then sort of change it and become less anxious.
Right. So I'll give you an example. Um, if someone were to be anxious every time they stood up to give a presentation, let's say performance anxiety, and they say, whenever, I'm backstage, my hands will start to get cold and clammy. My heart will start to race. I'll get a bit nauseous. I might even start to sweat or feel like I'm going to throw up. Then what I can do in trance is have them, relax and watch themselves on a screen. So I can do some what we call dissociation, where they're not feeling this, but they're watching their themselves about to give a presentation, and they're watching themselves backstage. Okay, what's happening to this you, um, and they can dissociate from those feelings, but describe to me physically what's happening, and then I can tell them, okay, well, in the future, when this person is about to give a presentation, what might she do? And then we can go through some things that might be helpful. So then when the person is actually in that situation, then they can start to tap into um, those tools that we came up with in order to counteract the physiological things that happen when they get anxious and afraid. So again, yeah. And then, so that's one thing we can do is dissociation. And that's for people who, if it's too upsetting or too painful to actually feel it in the moment. But for some people, we don't have to dissociate. We can just have them, okay, we can have them feel it if it's mild and say, okay, if we can use a dial to turn up or turn down the level of anxiety. And that gives them a sense of control. So I can actually have them imagine a control panel with a dial. Okay, how anxious are you now? Can you turn it up? Can you turn it down? And one thing that lets them know is that they're in control of it. So it might seem like counterproductive to turn up your anxiety, but it lets you know that you're in control of it. And then I can have you turn it down. We do the same thing for pain too. We can have people in more control of their pain by using dials and different, things that we can imagine that might be helpful.
Well, I read that when you're under hypnosis, when someone is under hypnosis, they tend to be more open to suggestions.
Yeah.
Um, so why is that?
So, um, so we talked in the beginning, we talked about hypnosis, trance, and suggestion. So suggestion is what are kind of like instructions to the subconscious or unconscious mind. And what happens with our conscious minds is that our conscious minds are a filter for things. So we don't just take things in um, passively. So whenever I see or do something, or whenever I talk to somebody, I'm always processing, always analyzing, always categorizing, always, you know, trying to figure out where this fits into my brain. So the conscious mind is like a filter. So um, for a lot of people, that can become a barrier to just receiving instructions and doing what they know is right. What trance does is it gets rid of that conscious filter. And so with suggestion, once somebody's in trance, they're more easily susceptible to suggestion because that conscious filter is taken away. And there's different ways to do this. Sometimes it's voluntary, sometimes in terms of like media, it's involuntary. So what people don't know is that there is a lot of time and energy and money put into having people go into trance for different reasons. Um, Definitely with social media, there's different ways to induce trance. So then people find themselves scrolling for hours and not know why. They're in trance. And during that trance, they receive several suggestions, usually to purchase this or that, or to watch this or that, um, because their conscious mind is being co-opted and they're getting suggestions planted directly into their subconscious mind. Um, People do, in the grocery store, when you walk in, there's certain things that are trance inducing that might induce pleasant memories that help you go into trance, especially when it comes to smell. So that's why grocery stores will have certain smells, or certain other stores will have smells that will trigger memories to help you go into trance. So you're in an altered state, again, primed to buy things. Um, so so again, you're more susceptible to suggestion because you're in an altered state, and that altered state is not analyzing, is not processing and saying, do I want this? Does this make sense? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? All that is gone. And all you're doing is just receiving those suggestions. Um, Interestingly enough, children are in a state of trance. So up until a certain age as children, we are in this altered state, and that's why it's so important that we recognize this in children. Children process things differently. They said that they're like sponges, and it's because they're in sort of like a trance state from a very young age, where they're taking in huge amounts of information, forming memories differently than we do. And that's why sometimes when we get nostalgic and remember our childhood, it feels different. It feels, it just has a different quality to it, is because these memories were formed when we were in a trance state. And so and then as we get older, just developmentally things change, and we become more analytical and able to filter things appropriately. But but that's why we're so open to suggestion and trance.
What's one of the biggest myths about hypnosis, hypnotherapy, which however you want to phrase it, that you'd like to dispel?
So I would say one of the biggest myths is that it's something special or unique or something that only certain people can do.
Mm.
Again, the trance state is available to anyone, anywhere, at any time. And it's, again, something that we do. We go into trance, in and out of trance, always. And it's such a powerful tool to be able to use, because we do, I believe, we all have access to resources within our deeper selves that is able to solve problems, um, and is able to give us knowledge and wisdom that we don't always have access to when we're so absorbed in our conscious mind from day to day. So by saying only certain people can do hypnosis or only certain people can go into trance, what you're saying is that you don't have access to those resources, and that's not true. Sometimes people just have lost their way. In a way, they're so consumed with, especially again in this culture, so consumed with day-to-day living that they don't slow down enough to realize that they have access to this powerful resource. So one of my favorite things is to teach people that they can do it and to help them do it, and then also to be able to do it so that they don't need me anymore. That's my goal, is to train people to use their trance state, to basically self hypnosis, to do what they need to do, whether it's like athletic performance or performance at work, or again, just general anxiety, habits, that kind of thing.